Headphone Part 1, The Beginning of the Final Days. A deep emotional narrative about Jesus Christ. The sun was beginning to rise over the ancient city of Jerusalem. Golden light spilled across the dusty roads, touching the stone walls, the crowded streets, and the hopeful faces of thousands who had gathered. There was something unusual in the air that morning, a quiet anticipation, like the world itself was holding its breath. People whispered among themselves, "He is coming, the one who heals, the one who speaks like no other." And then, he appeared. Jesus Christ rode slowly into the city, not on a war horse, not like a king of power, but humbly, on a donkey. A symbol not of conquest, but of peace. As he entered, something extraordinary happened. People began laying down their cloaks on the road. Others cut palm branches and spread them before him. The crowd grew louder, their voices rising like waves. Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Children ran forward, laughing and shouting. Elderly men wept quietly. Women watched with hope shining in their eyes. For many, this was the moment they had been waiting for. A savior, a king, a deliverer. But not everyone was celebrating. In the shadows, watching carefully, stood the religious leaders. Their eyes were not filled with joy, but with suspicion and fear. "Look at them," one of them whispered angrily. "The whole world is following him." They had heard his teachings. They had seen his miracles. But instead of believing, they felt threatened. Because this man, this humble teacher, was changing everything. Meanwhile, Jesus continued forward. Calm, silent, knowing. There was no pride in his face, no excitement of fame. Only a deep, quiet understanding. Because he knew something no one else fully understood. This celebration was leading to suffering. As he looked at the city of Jerusalem, his expression changed. His eyes filled with tears. Yes, tears. The crowd was cheering, celebrating, shouting his name. But he wept. Softly, painfully. "If only you knew, what brings you peace." His voice was heavy with sorrow. Because he saw what was coming. Rejection, pain, betrayal, and the cross. The people expected a king who would fight. But Jesus came as a king who would sacrifice. They wanted freedom from Rome. But he came to bring freedom to the soul. As the day continued, he entered the temple. The sacred place. But what he saw there disturbed him deeply. The house of prayer had become a place of business. People buying, selling, arguing, cheating. His eyes burned with righteous anger. For the first time, the calm teacher became fierce. He overturned tables. Coins scattered across the floor. Voices shouted in shock, "My house shall be called a house of prayer. But you have made it a den of thieves." Silence fell. The same people who cheered him, now stood in fear. Because this was not just a teacher. This was someone with authority. That night, everything changed. The cheers faded, the excitement quieted, and a shadow began to grow over the story. A shadow of betrayal. A shadow of destiny. Far away from the crowds. One of his own disciples sat in darkness. Thinking, struggling, deciding. His name was Judas. And in his heart, a storm was forming. Jesus knew. He always knew. But still, he walked forward, step by step, toward the greatest sacrifice in human history. Headphone Part 2, The Last Supper. The night of love and betrayal. Night had fallen over Jerusalem. The sum of the city had softened into a distant murmur. Lanterns flickered in narrow streets, and the air carried a strange stillness, as if something sacred and sorrowful was about to unfold. Inside a quiet upper room, a table had been prepared. Simple. Bread, wine, silence. Jesus Christ entered the room slowly, followed by his disciples. They had walked with him for years. They had seen miracles, heard words that changed their hearts, felt a love they could not fully understand. And yet, tonight felt different. There was a weight in the air, something unspoken. They sat down. The sound of movement, of robes brushing the floor, of quiet breathing filled the room. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jesus looked at them, each one, carefully, lovingly, as if memorizing their faces. And then, he did something unexpected. He stood up, took a towel, and knelt down. The disciples looked at each other in confusion. Their master, their teacher, was kneeling before them. He began to wash their feet. Dirty feet, tired feet, human feet, one by one, in silence. Water poured gently into the basin, the soft sound echoing in the quiet room. When he came to Peter, Peter pulled back. "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus looked up at him, calm and gentle. "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter shook his head. "No, you shall never wash my feet." Jesus' voice softened, but carried deep meaning. "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Peter's resistance broke instantly. "Then Lord, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." A faint smile touched Jesus' face. Even now, he was teaching them. Love is not power. Love is humility. After he finished, he returned to his place. The room was silent. He looked at them again, and said, "I have set you an example, that you should do as I have done for you." Then, the atmosphere changed. It became heavier, darker. Jesus took the bread into his hands. He gave thanks, and broke it. The sound of breaking echoed deeper than it should have. "Take this, and eat it." His voice was calm, but filled with meaning. "This is my body, given for you." The disciples exchanged confused glances. They didn't fully understand, but they felt something sacred was happening. Then he took the cup. Wine shimmered in the dim light. "Drink from it, all of you." A pause. A deep breath. "This is my blood, of the covenant, poured out for many, for the forgiveness of sins." A silence fell that felt almost heavy to breathe in. Something was ending. Something was beginning. And then, Jesus spoke words that changed everything. "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." The room froze. The disciples looked at each other in shock. "Surely not I, Lord." One after another, they asked. Fear, confusion, pain. Even Judas sat there, quiet, still, hiding the storm inside him. Jesus answered slowly, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me, will betray me." The tension grew unbearable. Judas finally spoke, softly, "Rabbi, is it I?" Jesus looked at him, not with anger, not with hatred, but with a sadness deeper than words. "You have said so." No one else fully understood. But Judas did, and in that moment, something inside him broke, or hardened. He stood up quietly. The chair scraped softly against the floor. No one stopped him. No one knew. As Judas walked out into the night, darkness swallowed him. Inside the room, the light still flickered. But everything had changed. Jesus looked at the remaining disciples. His voice now carried urgency and love. "A new command I give you, love one another." He paused. "As I have loved you, so you must love one another." This was not just a teaching. This was his legacy. Peter leaned forward. "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered gently, "Where I am going, you cannot follow now. But you will follow later." Peter's voice rose with emotion. "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus looked at him with deep compassion. Because he knew. "Will you really lay down your life for me?" A pause. A painful truth. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Peter fell silent. The room grew heavier. These were not just words. This was goodbye, hidden inside teaching. The night deepened. The final hours had begun. Love had been shown. Truth had been spoken. And betrayal had already started. Headphone Part 3, The Garden of Gethsemane. The night of agony, the beginning of the end. The night had grown darker. The air was colder now, heavier. Jerusalem, once alive with celebration, had fallen into a deep and uneasy silence. The streets were nearly empty, shadows stretching long under the faint glow of lanterns. And slowly, quietly, Jesus Christ walked out of the city. His disciples followed him. But something was different. The warmth of the supper was gone. The comfort of unity had faded. Now there was tension, fear, uncertainty. They crossed the quiet paths and moved toward a place known as Right Finger Garden of Gethsemane. An olive garden. A place Jesus often went to pray. A place of peace. But tonight, it would become a place of deep sorrow. As they entered the garden, the sound of leaves rustling softly in the wind filled the silence. The moonlight filtered through twisted olive branches, casting broken shadows across the ground. Jesus stopped. He turned to his disciples. His face was different now. There was a visible weight on him. A heaviness, like he was carrying something unseen, yet unbearable. He spoke quietly. "Sit here, while I go over there and pray." Then he took Peter, James, and John with him. The closest to him, the ones who had seen his glory. Now, they would see his pain. As they walked deeper into the garden, Jesus began to change. His steps slowed. His breathing grew heavier. His heart was troubled. Then he stopped, turned to them, and spoke words filled with deep anguish. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow, even to the point of death." A pause. A fragile moment. "Stay here, and keep watch with me." But they did not fully understand. How could they? They had seen him calm storms, raise the dead, speak with authority. But now, he looked human, broken. Jesus moved a little farther ahead. Alone. Completely alone. And then, he fell to the ground. The earth beneath him felt cold. The silence around him, crushing. This was not the calm teacher anymore. This was a man facing suffering beyond imagination. He prayed, his voice trembling, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." A pause. A deep breath filled with pain. "Yet not as I will, but as you will." This was the moment of decision. The moment where divine purpose met human fear. The weight of what was coming. The pain. The betrayal. The cross. He felt it all. The gospel accounts describe something extraordinary. His sorrow became so intense that his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. This was agony. Pure, deep, unfiltered agony. After some time, he stood up slowly and returned to his disciples. They were asleep. Peter, James, John. Sleeping. Jesus looked at them, not with anger, but with quiet disappointment and sadness. "Could you not keep watch with me for 1 hour?" He said softly. "Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation." A pause. "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Then he turned, and went back again. Once more, he fell to the ground. His voice now heavier, more surrendered. "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." This was no longer a request. This was acceptance. He was choosing the path, the suffering, the sacrifice. Again, he returned. And again, they were sleeping. Their eyes were heavy. Their understanding, limited. For the 3rd time, he went back to pray. The same words. The same surrender. And then, silence. The struggle was over. The decision complete. Jesus stood up, calm now, resolved. He walked back to his disciples one last time. Are you still sleeping and resting? A pause. Then his voice changed. Firm, certain. Look, the hour has come. In the distance, there were lights, moving, growing closer. The sound of footsteps, metal, voices. Jesus looked toward the approaching crowd and said, "Rise, let us go." His voice carried no fear now, only purpose. Here comes my betrayer. And in that moment, the quiet garden became the beginning. Headphone Part 4, The Arrest. The kiss of betrayal, the moment everything changed. The night air had turned cold. A silence hung over the garden, but it was no longer peaceful. It was tense, heavy, like the world itself was waiting for something terrible to happen. In the distance, lights appeared. Small at first, then growing. Torches, flickering flames cutting through the darkness. The sound followed. Footsteps, armor clinking, voices, low, urgent, determined. Jesus Christ stood still. He did not run. He did not hide. He did not turn away. Behind him, the disciples began to panic. Whispers filled the air. What is happening? Who are they? Fear spread quickly among them. And then, they saw him, walking ahead of the crowd. Not a soldier, not a stranger, but one of their own. Judas. His face was tense, but controlled. His steps, deliberate, but inside him, there was a storm. He had already made his choice. There was no turning back now. As he approached, the soldiers slowed behind him. Watching, waiting. Judas had given them a sign. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. He stepped closer, closer, closer. Jesus looked at him. Their eyes met, and in that moment, time seemed to slow. There was no anger in Jesus' eyes. No hatred. Only a deep, painful sadness. Judas leaned in and kissed him. A simple gesture. A kiss. A sign of love, turned into a symbol of betrayal. Jesus spoke softly. Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Those words hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. For a brief second, it seemed like Judas might break. Like he might step back, fall to his knees, take it all back. But he didn't. He stepped away. And the moment passed. Suddenly, the soldiers moved forward. Fast. Aggressive. Hands reached out. Grabbing. Seizing. The disciples reacted instantly. Chaos broke out. Fear turned into action. One of them, Peter, drew his sword. In a moment of panic, of desperation, he struck. The blade cut through the air and struck a servant of the high priest. His ear fell to the ground. Everything froze. Jesus turned immediately, not in anger, but in control. Put your sword back in its place, he said firmly. A pause. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Then, something incredible happened. Even in the middle of betrayal, even in the moment of his arrest, Jesus reached out and healed the man. The ear, restored. The pain, gone. The soldiers stood stunned. The disciples, confused. Even now, even here, he was still showing mercy. Jesus then turned to the crowd. His voice calm, but filled with truth. Am I leading a rebellion, that you have come out with swords and clubs? He looked around. Every day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. A pause. But this is your hour, when darkness reigns. Those words carried something deeper. This was not just an arrest. This was a moment where darkness seemed to win. The disciples looked around. Fear took over. Their courage disappeared. One by one, they began to run. They left him alone. The one they had followed. The one they had promised to stand with. Now stood by himself. Bound, arrested, taken. The soldiers seized him tightly. Rough hands, cold chains, no respect. And yet, he did not resist. No anger, no fight, no escape, only silence and surrender. As they led him away, the garden grew quiet again. The same place where he had prayed, where he had wept, where he had surrendered his will, now became the place where everything changed. The disciples had scattered into the night. Judas had disappeared into darkness. And Jesus was walking toward suffering, step by step, closer to the cross. Headphone Part 5, The Trial. The silence of truth, the roar of the crowd. The night had not yet ended. Darkness still covered Jerusalem, but something had changed. The silence of the garden had been replaced by movement. Urgent, harsh, unforgiving. Jesus Christ was led through the narrow streets. Bound, surrounded, watched. The same city that had welcomed him with cheers now looked on in confusion and fear. Some recognized him. Some whispered, "Is that him, the teacher, the healer?" But no one stepped forward. No one spoke. He was taken first to the religious leaders. Men of authority. Men of law. Men who had already made their decision. Inside the chamber, the atmosphere was cold. Judgment had already been decided. They only needed a reason. False witnesses were brought forward. One after another. Voices raised. Accusations thrown like stones. He said he would destroy the temple. He claims to be the Son of God. He is misleading the people. The room filled with noise. Lies mixed with fear. Anger mixed with jealousy. And in the center of it all, Jesus stood, silent. He did not defend himself. He did not argue. He did not fight the accusations. The high priest stepped forward. Frustrated, demanding, "Do you not answer? What are these men testifying against you?" Silence. That silence was louder than any defense. Finally, the high priest spoke again. This time, directly. "I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." The room went still, every eye fixed on him. And then, Jesus spoke. "You have said so." A pause. Then words that shook the room. "But I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power, and coming on the clouds of heaven." Gasps filled the chamber. Shock, anger, outrage. The high priest tore his robes. "Blasphemy!" he shouted. "Why do we need any more witnesses? The decision was made. He is worthy of death." And then, respect disappeared. They spat on him, struck him, mocked him. "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?" The one who healed the sick now stood beaten, humiliated, but still, silent. Outside, another story was unfolding. Peter, the same Peter who had said, "I will never leave you," now stood in the shadows, watching, afraid. A servant girl looked at him closely. "You were with him, weren't you?" Peter's heart raced. Fear took over. "I don't know what you're talking about." Another voice. "Surely you are one of them." "No, I'm not." Then a third voice. Stronger, certain. "You are one of his followers." And this time, Peter broke. "I don't know the man." At that very moment, a rooster crowed. The sound cut through the night like a blade. Peter froze. And then, he remembered. The words, the warning, the truth. And in the distance, Jesus turned, and looked at him, not with anger, not with judgment, but with deep, knowing sadness. Peter's heart shattered. He ran away, and wept, bitterly. Morning began to break. The religious leaders had no authority to carry out execution. So they took Jesus to the Roman governor. Right finger Pontius Pilate. Pilate looked at him carefully. This was not what he expected. No rebellion, No violence. No resistance. Just a man, calm, silent. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. Jesus answered simply, "You have said so." Pilate questioned him further, but Jesus gave no answers. And this troubled him. "Do you hear the testimony they bring against you?" Pilate asked. But Jesus remained silent. Pilate turned to the crowd, confused, uncertain. "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But the crowd had grown, and their voices grew louder. The leaders stirred them, turned them, controlled them. Pilate offered a choice, a tradition: release one prisoner. "Who do you want me to release to you?" he asked. "Jesus, or Barabbas?" Barabbas was a criminal, a rebel, a violent man. Surely, they would choose Jesus. But the crowd shouted, "Barabbas!" Pilate hesitated. "Then what shall I do with Jesus?" And then, the words that changed history. "Crucify him!" The shout echoed, louder, stronger, unstoppable. "Crucify him!" Pilate's face hardened. Why? What crime has he committed? But they only shouted louder. "Crucify him!" The noise became overwhelming, relentless. Pilate saw the truth, but he also saw the crowd. And fear of chaos overcame justice. He took water, washed his hands before them all. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." And just like that, the decision was made. Jesus was sentenced to death. Headphone Part 6, The Crucifixion. The cross, the sacrifice, the love beyond pain. Morning had fully arrived, but there was no peace in the light. The city of Jerusalem, once filled with hope, now echoed with tension, noise, and cruelty. Jesus Christ stood condemned, innocent, yet sentenced, silent, yet speaking louder than the world itself. The soldiers took him, rough hands, no mercy. They stripped him, mocked him, placed a scarlet robe on his shoulders, pretending he was a king. Then, they twisted together a crown, not of gold, but of thorns. They pressed it onto his head. Hard, sharp, piercing. Blood began to flow, slowly, painfully, down his face. They knelt before him in mockery. "Hail, King of the Jews!" Then they struck him, again, and again. Spit, laughter, cruelty. The one who healed the broken was now being broken. After the mocking, they removed the robe. The wounds reopened. Fresh pain tore through his body. Then they placed a heavy wooden cross on his shoulders. "Carry it." And he did, step by step, through the streets, weak, bleeding, exhausted. The same streets where people once cheered him, now watched in silence, or worse, joined the mockery. Some cried, some turned away, some stared, unable to understand. The cross grew heavier with every step. His body weakened, his strength faded, and then, he fell. The wood crashed against the ground. Dust rose into the air. The soldiers shouted, "No compassion, no pause." They forced another man to carry the cross. Right finger Simon of Cyrene. But Jesus still walked beside it, toward his destiny, toward the place called right finger Golgotha, the place of the skull. The air there felt different, cold, heavy, final. They laid the cross on the ground. And then, they laid him on it. His arms stretched out. The soldiers took nails, large, cold, unforgiving, and without hesitation, they drove them through his hands. The sound echoed. Then his feet. Pain beyond words, pain beyond imagination. And yet, no curses, no anger, only silence and love. They lifted the cross, slowly, roughly, and dropped it into place. His body hung there, suspended between heaven and earth. The sky above seemed to darken. People gathered, some mocking, He saved others, but he cannot save himself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. Even criminals crucified beside him spoke. One mocked. The other believed. Remember me, when you come into your kingdom, one said. Jesus turned his head, despite the pain, and answered with grace, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Even now, in agony, he was saving others. Below the cross stood his mother, watching, helpless, broken. Jesus looked at her, then at his disciple. Woman, here is your son. Here is your mother. Even in death, he cared for her. Time passed slowly. Pain stretched endlessly. And then, he spoke again. Father, forgive them. A breath, a struggle, for they do not know what they are doing. Forgiveness. In the middle of suffering. Hours passed. Darkness covered the land. And then, a cry, loud, deep, filled with pain and mystery. My God, why have you forsaken me? The weight of the world, sin, suffering, separation, all carried, in that moment. His body weakened further. Breathing became harder. Each breath, a battle. And then, one final declaration. It is finished. Not defeat. Completion. The mission, fulfilled. And finally, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. His head fell forward. Silence. The earth shook. The ground trembled. The sky darkened completely. Even the soldiers were shaken. One of them whispered, surely, this was the Son of God. The cross stood still. But the world had changed forever. Headphone Part 7, Death, Burial, and the Silent Tomb. The end that felt final, the silence before the miracle. The sky was still dark. Not like night, but like something had broken in the heavens. The air felt heavy, still, as if the world itself was mourning. On the cross, Jesus Christ hung lifeless. The voice that once calmed storms was now silent. The hands that healed the sick, now still. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The crowd that had shouted, had quieted. The mocking voices were gone. In their place, confusion, fear, and a strange emptiness. The earth had shaken. The sky had darkened. Something greater than death had just taken place. But no one fully understood it yet. The soldiers stood near the cross. Uncertain, uneasy. One of them stepped forward. To make sure it was over. He lifted his spear, and pierced Jesus' side. Blood, and water, flowed out. It was finished. Truly finished. Far away, the disciples were hiding. The same men who once walked boldly beside him, now locked themselves behind closed doors. Fear had taken over. If they killed him, they can kill us too. Hope had collapsed. Everything they believed, everything they trusted, now felt lost. Back at the cross, a man stepped forward. A quiet man, a hidden follower. Right-fingered Joseph of Arimathea. He had not spoken before, had not stood in the crowd. But his heart believed. With courage, he went to request the body of Jesus.